Hello and welcome to Techiechap. In today's episode I will be taking a look at Peppermint OS. It's the very latest version from the Peppermint team. It's based on stable Debian Bullseye and it has an XFCE desktop environment. It's also described as a super lightweight desktop. Find out how I got on with it after the intro. And here we are. This is the Peppermint desktop after you run the installation. I will say the installation was very quick. It's Calamares installer, which is fairly standard nowadays in terms of Linux installs and other distribution installations, and it's very easy and straightforward. You get this new utility that the Peppermint team have created, which is the Welcome to Peppermint utility. And one of the reasons why Peppermint OS installs so quickly is because they haven't included any default applications. So it doesn't come bundled with their pick of applications. It's up to you to pick the applications that you want. So it's a super quick installer, but you don't get things like a web browser by default. You have to pick it using this Welcome to Peppermint section, or you can go off and just install it via the GNOME Software Center that's included with Peppermint. Before we get into that, let's just take a look at the release notes and find out what's new in Peppermint OS. So it says here that Team Peppermint is happy to announce that our latest release is an evolution, incorporating ideas Mark Greaves had been working on, as well as features we believe our community will find useful. And it talks about the Welcome to Peppermint application that appears after installation, which we're going to take a look at. The Peppermint Hub combines Peppermint settings and control center for managing your system. That's this icon down here. That's the Peppermint Hub there. Let's close that. And additional changes. LXDE components have been removed in favor of XFCE. So Peppermint had previously been based upon LXDE, but that has now been changed. Calamares replaces the Ubiquity system installation. I think that's a good choice. The Calamares installer is very, very good and very slick and straightforward. A minimum set of desktop wallpaper is included during installation, and you get the option to download additional wallpaper and old favorites of the Peppermint system. Streamlined set of icons and XFCE themes are included. Nemo replaces Thunar as the default file manager, but Thunar is still there if you would prefer to use it. As I've pointed out already, no web browser is installed. You can choose to install a browser starting from the welcome screen, and the main spin is based on Debian 64-bit. There's also an extra application called HBlock, which is a terminal-based ad blocker, and it can be enabled or disabled at any time. So that's the release notes there. So when you click on install a web browser, as you can see, I've already installed some things. These are the applications that are highlighted in brown, but you do get a list of software that you can install to get you up and running. And these include things like Make Calculator, Parole Media Player for XFCE, GPIC View, Image Viewer, Deconf Editor, and so on, and things like pmount for a standard mount program. I am actually going to install pmount just in case I want to plug a USB in here. But it's interesting that Snap, Flatpak and GNOME Software Store are also there to install should you so wish. Under the browser options, you get Firefox, Mozilla's open source browser, of course, Konqueror, GNOME Web or Epiphany, Falcon, the Qt5 browser by KDE, Tor browser, Midori, which we've also seen in other systems like Elementary, Qt browser, LuaKit, and of course Chromium as well. So I'm just going to install that pmount, and this is what happens when you install something, it just goes and opens up this nice little command line installation window down here, or the terminal view down here, so you can see exactly what's happening, and it goes off and install it, and then the terminal will let you know once that has been installed. All very nice. You also get Peppermint Extras, and Peppermint Extras will install the themes, the icons, and the wallpaper. There is an ICE tutorial, so Peppermint's ICE tutorial, and this tells you a little bit more about Peppermint and what Peppermint does. It says it makes heavy use of what are called site-specific browsers, or SSBs. Essentially, many modern web applications offer much advanced functionality, and SSBs allow these apps to be more directly integrated with the desktop. ICE now supports SSB through 4 web browsers: Chrome, Chromium, Firefox, and Vivaldi. So feel free to install whichever of these browsers you prefer, and rest assured you'll still be able to use ICE to create your SSBs. You may wonder what the difference is between ICE and Chromium's built-in Create Application Shortcut tool. The answer is that Chromium's built-in tool does not integrate with the system menu at all, and doesn't give the user the opportunity to remove SSBs. Both of these things can be achieved with ICE, as well as easily choosing custom icons for your SSB applications. So that's interesting in that, well, for starters, it mentions Vivaldi there, but I don't think Vivaldi is an option. It isn't an option under the list of browsers there to install. So that's interesting that they mention it, but it's not under here to install the browser. However, Firefox and Chromium are. And it's nice that they've given you a comparison of what the difference is between Chromium's create an app sort of shortcut to things like Google Docs or Google Sheets or web-based applications like that, compared to ICE, which will actually link them into the system menu. Right, open PepHub, and this is PepHub down here. And so Peppermint Hub is where you have both the desktop environment settings and the hardware and software settings. And it's nice that they've bundled these all together in a similar way to the last review where we looked at OpenSUSE. And OpenSUSE, they have their YAST program, perhaps not as in-depth as YAST, but it's nice the way they've kind of tried to put this together in one single place. So within here you can configure your display, you can configure the appearance. So these are all standard applications that you would expect with XFCE. You can also configure a different panel or add extra panels. If we go to Settings Manager, that will also launch a little bit more in terms of the hardware and other settings that aren't already included in here. If we click on hardware and software, we get things like the pulse audio volume control and also suggested packages. Let's just go here. And that takes you to software packages where you can again select their suggested or recommended packages. It's interesting that GNOME Store is there because we've installed GNOME Store, but Synaptic is also there, and you also get options for the App Image Hub, Flat Hub, and Snap Store as well. So if we just click on System Settings, that gives us a little bit more information about what we are actually running in the background. So as you can see, the main OS is actually Debian Bullseye Edition, or Debian 11, 64-bit. I'm running this on a Latitude E7440. The kernel is 5.10.0-16 AMD64. Now, the kernel version is relatively ancient even by today's standard. However, given that we're on, I think, 5.18 now, I think, or 5.19, not sure. So it is quite old, and it could be that you run into issues running this on new hardware. Certainly new hardware that's been released from, say, let's say June onwards, you may find some issues or compatibility issues there. Packages 1618. It's got my resolution there. The desktop environment is XFCE 4.16. It's the XF Windows Manager or XFWM4. And the Windows Manager theme is the default. Theme is Peppermint 10 Red Dark with Adwaita GTK3 theme. Icons are Pepperus GTK2 and Adwaita GTK3. XFCE terminal, and then you get a little more detail about my CPU and the memory. So Peppermint itself is more, given we've just looked at those settings, Peppermint itself is like a heavily themed Debian Bullseye edition in some ways. However, the Peppermint team have obviously put a lot of effort into developing their bespoke apps that slot into this system. For example, Peppermint Hub is one of them, and also the Peppermint welcome screen as well. And the idea is that they give you a system that is built and is ready to go once you've chosen the applications you want to install. As we've pointed out, Nemo is the default file manager. That's Nemo 4.8.6. And as you can see, the default settings within Nemo, it doesn't look like thumbnails are enabled by default for Matroska video, because these are a few videos I've put on there to test that. So that's a little bit of a shame. If we go to desktop settings, let's just take a quick look at the wallpapers available. Obviously, I've gone ahead and installed all the wallpapers available. Almost all of them have Peppermint or a Peppermint theme around them. This Peppermint theme of greys, black and red, as you can see there. It's very heavily branded, and yeah, so the Pennant Spec Edition, I'm not sure what that even means, but anyhow. There's a lot of branding going on here in terms of Peppermint, but you know, that's fair enough. They want to push the brand, push the name, make sure that you know that you are using Peppermint OS. That's absolutely fine. So we'll just pick that one for now. Of course, you can go off and find your own wallpapers and download those if you want to. On the panel down here, you do get a nice level of transparency, and you get the spaces selection as well. You get a choice of 4 spaces by default, and spaces just allows you to switch your desktop to another desktop if you want to, and you can quickly choose those down there. Also here you get the Peppermint update icon, and launching this and typing in your sudo password will then go off and have a look to see if there are any updates. Obviously I've installed the updates for this already, so there are no updates available. Over here we have the Peppermint Hub, which we've already had a brief look at, and the Peppermint Hub just contains things like the commonly used XFCE settings, and also things like the suggested packages and some audio controls, printer controls, the dconf editor, which is quite nice as well. So it's all very, very nice. In terms of applications, once you kind of get to choose the applications that you want to install, so you really do get the default XFCE applications that you would expect with XFCE. If we go to the version of Firefox that you get, I'm expecting it to be quite an old version. Let's have a look. It nicely ties in, it has to be said, it nicely ties in with the overall Peppermint theme running here, so that's quite good. Let's click on help and about Firefox. So we are running 91.11.0 ESR. This is the extended support release of Firefox. So currently Firefox is on 101. It might even be on 102 by now. So 91.11 is very, very old, but it is the extended support release. So you will be getting security patches with this browser. However, as I've pointed out there, it is a very, very old release of Firefox. If I just close that, and let's have a look at some of the other browsers. So I did install Midori as well. I just wanted to take a look at that. Yeah, it's Midori. So it's very, very lightweight. If we just click on about, it's Midori web browser version 7. Again, I think that's quite an old version of Midori as well. What's also interesting and wasn't included in the list of applications to install was anything Office-like. So there were no LibreOffice or OpenOffice, wasn't a selection there, or wasn't added to the welcome to Peppermint screen. So you don't get to install it from the get-go. So I think that's a little bit of a shame for new users who don't necessarily know their way around the system. Obviously, you can go off and install that yourself via the software manager. So if we click on System and go to Software, now we've installed also FlatHub support, so this should tie into FlatHub as well. All right, so it's the standard GNOME Software Center that we have here, and if we do a search for LibreOffice, there we go. So you get the standard options of LibreOffice Writer, etc. I'm expecting this to be, I'll just install Writer here, but I'm expecting this to be not the latest version of LibreOffice. That shouldn't take too long to install. However, whilst that's installing, we'll just go to the browser. We're going to have a look at Firefox, and we'll just take a look at the Peppermint OS website. Here we go. So how's that doing? Oh, it's still installing. Okay. So as you can see, Peppermint OS release 5-22-2022. So it's, it says hello to our latest lightweight, stable and super fast operating system based on Debian Bullseye and using the XFCE 4.16 desktop. Peppermint has migrated its own continuous delivery OS based on the Debian Bullseye repositories, giving you options to pull from testing if you like, and we believe this will appeal to new and experienced Linux users. Fair enough. And if you click on download Peppermint, as you can see, you get a 64-bit option and a 32-bit option as well. It is fantastic that they're supporting 32-bit options as well, as you don't get a lot of Linux distros that support 32-bit. All right, so LibreOffice has installed. Let's just see what version. I can already tell it's quite an older version. Okay, yeah, it's 7.0.4.2. So again, a pretty old version of LibreOffice. Again, because we're working off of the Debian package repositories, that'll be why that is such an old version. Because these are packages that Debian have considered to be stable, and they're not applications that are going to crash anytime soon. Well, in Debian's opinion. So what do I think of Peppermint OS, the latest release as of the middle of 2022? Well, it's a bit mixed. I actually quite like the theming here. What I would say is that this does feel, even though it's not necessarily the case, because they have put some effort into creating some bespoke applications here, it feels, it could be a little bit unfair to say this, like a theme on top of Debian Bullseye, a Peppermint theme that's just being put on top. And probably if you install Debian Bullseye with XFCE4 and then you were able to download the Peppermint theme, you would have pretty much the same experience. It's overall, however, fairly nice and fairly nicely put together, and it does hang together pretty well. So it's nice that you have this option to build a system the way you would like to. It's not as in-depth as, say, something like Arch, some of the Arch options that you can get out there, where you just install Arch and then you build the very desktop itself from scratch. And it's not as in-depth as something like, for example, FreeBSD, where you would build that system really from FreeBSD terminal upwards to the desktop that you want. So it's obviously not as in-depth as that. However, it's nice that it sort of fits the middle ground where you get to choose the applications that you want, and it gives you a desktop and it's installed absolutely fine on my Dell hardware here, detected my webcam fine. All those things work really well, and it's installed super quick. So I can't argue with that. My opinions for this is probably a 3.5 out of 5 for Peppermint OS. There isn't necessarily, it's difficult to give it that mark, there isn't necessarily anything wrong with it. It's just that it just feels a bit too much like a theme on top of Debian, as opposed to something that really is brand new. However, it's nice it exists, and it's nice it's an option there for, particularly for new users that perhaps want a little bit of a say in what applications they want installed on their system. So 3.5 out of 5 for Peppermint OS. If you have enjoyed this review, then please do like and subscribe. And if you have any comments, or you run Peppermint OS yourself and would like to comment, please do write it down below. That would be fantastic. So that's my review of Peppermint OS 2022 edition. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.